Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com. Welcome to the Geeks Menagerie. This is Green Lantern.
This is Roy Folker.
And I'm Maxwell Alexander Drake.
And today's episode, we have a wonderful conversation with Mr. Drake concerning his recent works and exploits.
And don't forget about the great and wonderful Snarf Quest Kickstarter. Oh, here's the key question. What do you want me to call you? Because I see everything listed as Drake and emails and stuff like that, so I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say.
Everyone calls me Drake. Even my family and friends, everyone calls me Drake. I mean, to get it out of the way, it is a professional name. It's not my real name. I actually made up the name Maxwell Alexander Drake when I was 12, when I wrote my first novel. I was 12. I started with the initials MAD. That was back in the day. I'm a little seasoned. It was back in the day when video game arcades were the only way to get your video game fix.
Oh, yeah.
When you won, you had three letters that you could put in at the end of the game, and mine was always MAD. So I started with MAD, and I created the name around that. And I've been writing under that name ever since. But since I've been a professional since 2008, I have only gone by Drake. Like literally my friends and family even call me Drake now. So I don't even, like this happened, I don't know, 6 months ago, somebody was calling me, by my real name in a store, and I heard somebody saying that name, but it didn't register in my brain as me. So I never turned around, and then finally they were like, Drake! And I turned around and I was like, what? And they were like, I'm calling you. I was like, oh, that was my real name, wasn't it? So I honestly go by Drake. And the reason why I don't really go by Maxwell Alexander, although there are people that call me those because they don't know, that it's not my real name, but my kids are also named that. So my children are named Maxwell and Alexander. So it's a little weird to be called by my kids' names, which is why I go by Drake.
Perfect.
I have to admit, I'm impressed. You're the first person other than me that uses the old, I call it a handle from video gaming. I've used DNV for the longest time.
Yeah.
I mistyped the first game I ever won. I accidentally mistyped my name in the game, and that's become the name of my theoretical software development company ever since.
There you go. I mean, that's yeah, that's kind of the way it happens. Actually, the funny thing is that the original name that I created was not Maxwell Alexander Drake. It was Maxwell Anthony Drake. And, I'd written my whole life, and after I got out of the Marine Corps, I got into software and hardware, and I worked in computers for about 15 years. And I've always written. My first book, Farmers and Mercenaries, is actually the 9th full novel that I had written. You'll never see the others because they're, not published worthy. But when we had our first child, I married someone who's a little crazy. It's the only way I could have married her anyway. And I said, my favorite male name is Maxwell. Would you mind if we name him Maxwell? If it's a boy, we didn't find out until he popped out. But she was like, no, that's fine. And then when we got pregnant for the second one, I said, could we follow suit? And she was like, heck no, I hate the name Anthony. And then she was like, and you're stupid to write under that name anyway, because you got Maxwell, which is a Greek name, and then you got Anthony, which is not really as strong. If you're going to go with A, go with Alexander. It makes so much more sense. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. And so then we named our youngest Alexander, and then a couple years after that is when I was published for the first time. So it's been Maxwell Alexander Drake ever since.
That is awesome.
Nice. I was always wondering how people came up with pseudo or different pen names.
Pen names
is what I'm trying to babble. Yeah.
I think everybody's got a different story. I mean, just like you're accidentally typing it in wrong on a video game. I mean, I think everyone has a story for why they have it. I've got another friend. He's not published, but he writes under the name of P.S. James, but his name is Paul James Smith. but he came up with the handle years ago of P.S. James, which is his first initial and last initial and middle name. That's what he liked. Like I said, he's never been published, but he still writes under that name to this day.
Yeah, unfortunately, if I used Green Lantern, I'd get sued. So
a lot of publishers may frown upon that as an actual author name.
Yeah, just a little bit. Well, let's. I don't know what. How did you get into writing, and what was your first successful book series?
I started writing when I wrote my first book when I was 12, and I call it a novel. It was probably about 40,000 words, so really it was a novella. But for a 12-year-old, it was a novel, and I'll die calling it that. It's just always been, I've always been the storyteller. Growing up, playing Dungeons & Dragons, I was, most of the time I was the DM. I've just always been attracted to telling stories and telling tales and thinking about things differently than most. And that's what I talk when I talk about my writing classes, and I'm talking to other writers, or especially when I'm talking to high schools where there's a mixed crowd of 2 or 3 kids that actually care about writing and 30 kids that are just happy that I'm there so they don't have to do work. But writers see things differently. We're a different breed. I often say that, people say that you're not born a doctor or not born a lawyer, whatever. I do believe you're born a writer, because I think it's kind of a perception of how you see things and how you see the world. The example I always give is, and I never wrote this as a story, but it just exemplifies kind of the way writers think. So I'm driving down, I don't even remember where I was going, but I was driving downtown, and I passed a billboard that it was a big black billboard with white lettering, and all it said was, vasectomies. It's easier than you think. And it gave me a 800 number. And obviously it's just a doctor looking for clients. And, I giggled just like that. I mean, it's kind of a funny little advertisement. And vasectomy scared the crap out of me because, the whole knife thing. But, by the time I got to my destination, my brain had created an entire dystopian story. And again, I've never written this, but, I might eventually one day, unless somebody takes it, because I can tell the story all the time. But basically I started thinking about, it won't be long until the government gets really active in advertising for birth control. Us as a society is not gonna continue to grow indefinitely. And then I was like, and then what happens when we get to the point where the government tries to interact with us like the government of China does, where they limit the births? You actually have to give it a permit to have a child. And that's not going to go over well, because the whole Americans like their freedom, and it's just, you can't tell somebody what they can or cannot do here in America.
Right.
And then I was like, and then what happens if they try to maybe control it, in a subversive manner, like maybe putting something in our water or something like that? And then what happens if they accidentally sterilize the United States population? What would that do to the last great superpower on the planet? If the entire population in a 1-year period became sterilized. And so it's just the way I think about stuff. It's where my brain goes.
See,
and I think all writers do.
My brain kind of goes that way too, but my problem is, it takes me a long time to get those thoughts onto paper. So.
Well, and just going into, part of Rod and mine's problem, because him and I have been bouncing back and forth trying to write for years. How do you get past that perpetual writer's block?
Well, the bad thing is, and you're going to hate me for this, I've never had writer's block.
Damn you.
Now, well, I do have writer's lays. Like the other day, I didn't get much sleep. And it's spring break anyway, so my family's home, and it's always harder for me to work when they're in the house. So I did start playing Hitman on the Xbox at about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't stop until about 11 o'clock that night. So, and I knew, I have stuff that I have to do, but I like my 8 hours of sleep, and if I don't get it, I'm not as creative. What I write is not as good. I'll tell you this, and because I teach writing to a lot of people, when you sit down, do you start writing and try to find your story from there? Or do you spend weeks plotting out the story without even writing a word?
Rod mostly does B. I mostly do A, but I keep on rewriting it over and over again because something always sounds wrong.
Yeah, I like plotting a lot, and that gives me more ideas, which turns into more plotting and more subplots, and yeah.
And then do you just never stop plotting and never start writing, or?
No, then I get distracted, and then I start working on another project, and then I try to write for a little bit, and then that fails when I realize, God, that sentence looks really horrible. And so after I try to write a paragraph or two, and then I'll go back and kind of analyze it and go, God, that's horrible. So I think I analyze what I write too much instead of just writing.
Yeah, I think you have two different problems. The one that, and I'm sorry, I didn't see which one was glowing. I'm also eating dinner while I'm chatting with you guys.
No problem.
Was it you, Roy, that was saying that you don't plot, you just start writing?
Yep.
And so you're the one that hasn't finished anything? You end up with writer's block?
I end up getting hung up on whatever I'm writing, and I can't think of where to go from there.
And there's a reason for that. There's two types of writers. There's discovery writers, and there's what I call pantsers, people that write by the seat of their pants. And then there's plotters. You are a plotter, and you're trying to write as a pantser. The reason why I don't have writer's block is I am a plotter, and I figured that out early on in my career. And I sit there for a novel. I might spend 4 to 6 weeks plotting out that novel on a big, gigantic dry erase board. My office is filled with the big school board-sized dry erase boards. And I plot out every detail. When I sit down to write, before I write the first word, the book is finished. I know every chapter. I know where it starts. I know where all the plot points are. I know where I'm going to be juking, where I'm going to be jiving, who's going to live, who's going to die. Every little bit of that story has already been completely mapped out before I even start writing. And that's just the way I am. And if you haven't finished a story as a discovery writer, I think you'll find if you spend some time plotting the whole story out, you'll do yourself justice and you'll end up finishing projects.
I have to give that a try. I know Rod and I have been trying to work together and writing a book, and we actually did pretty good, but then personal lives got in the way. And we were actually making progress that way by basically he overplots and I underplot, so combined we were able to begin finally making some progress.
Yeah, and then I think we lost all of our notes, didn't we?
Oh no, I've still got all of them.
Oh, thank God. I keep forgetting to back things up and then my computer dies. I'm getting better at it now. It's not as bad as it used to be, but...
One word for you, carbonite. They
yes.
should pay me for as much as I advertise for them. I mean, it's $60 a year. It's unlimited backup, and it backs up everything all the time, constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the cool thing is, it's accessible anywhere. So, like, there's been times where I've been at a convention where I didn't know I was going to read something, so I didn't come prepared with it. And they'll be like, hey, you got half an hour. Can you read one of your shorts? I can jump onto Carbonite, log into my document folder, and browse right to every single story I've ever written, because my entire documents is backed up on Carbonite. Everything that I've done.
Nice.
Sweet.
So it really does, because I'm paranoid of that. And even though I have Carbonite, I also have an internal backup. So I've got an external drive sitting on my desk that backs up everything as well.
Oh yeah. I have a personal Linux server I've been running for 20 years that I keep everything backed up on. And then, yeah, every now and then I go through and I've gone from floppy disks to CD-ROM drives to DVD-ROM drives. And I'm now upgrading to Blu-ray discs for archiving.
Yeah. I used to do all that, but once I discovered Carbonite, man, it's fire and forget, so I just don't even think about it anymore. And it's always there. So, it's a cool thing.
Nah, I'm one of those conspiracy theory nuts. I don't like people taking my data. I won't do that.
That's why you just don't put it on Google.
That's also true.
Exactly. Now, I do not use any of the Google stuff. Well, I'm on Google Plus because I do some interviews off of it, so I have an account with them. Matter of fact, I'm doing one next week on it, but that's the only thing I use it for.
Yeah, like, I don't mind them having my photos or, documents that I write between people, but yeah, all of my software and my writing stuff stays off of any public shares.
Right.
Yeah, the only
I
stuff
can understand that.
The only stuff I have on there is just my podcast files for notes for episodes. So
I'm not big enough to worry about it. If somebody wants to hack into my stuff and steal it, awesome. It just means, well, when my first book came out, I kept hitting the pirate boards because, you know, I'm a computer guy. I was certified in almost everything, including internet security. And I kept looking for my first book, and it never came out, or, you know, it took about 9 months after it came out when it finally hit the pirate boards. And I was like, I was very upset by that. And everybody kept saying, you know, why? I'm like, because that means that my stuff isn't good enough to steal. Now everything I've written is out there on the pirate boards, and now it's like, wait a minute, you should be paying me for that. So it's definitely a double-edged sword. Yep. If you went to my blog, I've only got 2 blog posts on there's 3 blog posts actually. When I started up, I said I was going to blog. About a year later, I blogged and said, hey, so I haven't blogged in a year, but I'm going to. And then a year later, I did 2 posts on piracy. I think that was 2 years ago.
Nice.
So, yeah. Well, my publicist bitches at me about that all the time. She's like, you know, why aren't you Facebooking more? Why aren't you blogging more? And I'm like, I write 5,000 words a day. I don't want to then write a couple hundred more, you know, 1,000 more on a blog. It's like, you know, it's the reason why the plumber's house leaks, because he fixes plumbing all day long and he comes home and his pipes are leaking. He's like, I just don't care. It's just more work. So it's kind of that syndrome for me in blogging.
Yeah, I completely relate to that.
Yeah, I don't really blog per se. I pretty much use my blog just to publicize the podcast, and once in a while.
I need to do more. There's so much to do in this industry, and it's not just about writing anymore. You know, self-publishing is one of those things that's a double-edged sword. I always say it's one of the best things that happened to the publishing industry, and it's one of the worst things that happened to the publishing industry. Just like I say, it's the best time to be an author right now, and it's the worst time to be an author right now.
Well, the biggest problem is it takes such a long time to build up an audience.
Yes.
Especially on social media, you know. We've been doing our show for, I think, well, we're on a year and a half now. And until we went weekly, and I started expanding out into Google Plus and Facebook and a few others to kind of help promote the show and get into different groups to, you know, discuss different topics. You know, I'd say in the last 4 months we finally started taking off. Especially in the last month and a half, we've really started taking off. So we've gotten a lot more listeners.
We've become a little bit more adjusted to the fact that we're doing this, and we're more comfortable with it, I think, is a big thing too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And that comes with time, and that's even something I talk about in writing. There is a comfortability to writing, because that was the other thing I was going to touch on, is when you criticize your own work. I mean, no one is harder on me than I am. I just loathe everything about myself. So it's natural for me to take a look at what I'm writing at the time and really rip it apart and tear it apart. But the reality is twofold. One, that makes me stronger as a writer, but 2, at some point you have to know that you have to let it go. It's sort of like when I came to my Zen moment with my fan critiques, because for the most part, I'm running between a 4.3 and a 4.5 stars on everything that's ever been published of mine, and I'm creeping up on 750,000 words published. But that still means that there's 1 to 1.5 people out there that feel like I would probably make more money picking up cans as opposed to being a writer. And you have to understand that it's a subjective industry. You know, you give my books to 10 people and 8 of them are going to like it, and 2 of them or 1.5 of them are not. And that's just kind of the way it is. So I don't even read my reviews anymore. I look at my, I make sure that my stats are still in that 4.2 to 4.5 range. But outside of that, somebody had a bad day and they didn't like, I mean, anything can make you not like a book. It just catches you wrong or whatever. Well, I spoke last night at a local group, and it was the second time I spoke there. I spoke there last year, and it was the same waitress that waits this event. It's an event of about 60 people. It's a writers club here in Vegas. And she had bought my first book when I was there last year, and she was like, oh yeah, I love fantasy. And so she was there this year, or, last night as well. And so I saw her and I said, so yeah, you bought my first book when I was here last year. And she's like, yeah, I didn't really like it. I only read a couple chapters and then it just never hooked me. And I was like, oh, well, I'm sorry about that. She goes, it's okay. My best friend loves it. She's already read it like 20 times and she just keeps rereading. I'm like, okay. I mean, so what can you say? I mean, it's a subjective industry. So you got to at some point know that you are doing your job. If you're doing, if 8 or 9 out of 10 people like what you do, then you got to let go of that last 10 to 15%. Because you'll never please everybody.
Right.
If you change to please those, you'll end up pissing at least one other person off, if not more.
Well, and on top of that, everybody knows that the internet is full of trolls who just like to hate on most things.
Yeah.
Well, my only 1-star review on Amazon is a guy. It was a very short review, and it said, I hated the voice of the guy who read the audiobook.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
I have no control over that. Like, the publisher sent me the audiobook after it was done and said, here's your audiobook. So, I get a 1-star because of it.
I gotta tell you, I'm gonna be laughing about that for weeks. That's priceless.
Well, I mean, it's just the way it is. And he had a valid point, because what he said was, he felt that the guy paused at some odd times. He actually said he had Captain Kirk's disease. And I agree with him. Cameron Byerly, who reads for my stuff, reads for a bunch of New York Times bestsellers. He reads for David Eddings and Terry Brooks and quite a few, big fantasy people. And he's got a beautiful, deep, booming voice, and he does. It's amazing because I didn't think anybody could do this, because I have Jamaican accents and I have Indian accents and I have Scottish accents and British accents, and I write them that way. I got a big lion dude, and he did all the voices perfectly. I mean, they are fantastic. But he does pause in some weird spots, but that's not really his fault. It also could have been cleaned up in editing. And whoever edited the book really was the final person who should have caught that. But whoever's fault it was, I still get the 1-star. Still comes down to my Amazon review. So
speaking of that, tell us a little bit about the genesis of Oblivion Saga.
Well, that's my big fantasy saga that's out. It was Farmers and Mercenaries, which was the first book of the Genesis of Oblivion Saga, was my first major book published. I had some short stories published before then, but it was my first debut novel. It's basically, and I don't want to give too much away, so I always kind of describe it awkwardly, because people say that I give too much information when I'm describing it, because I know the whole story. I know how it starts and where it's going and how it's going to end, and people hate spoilers.
I should hope you know.
The story, I got this idea. I like dealing with tropes, especially bad tropes in fantasy. So one of the things in fantasy that's always upset me when I'm reading is when you have this hero that becomes the hero and they're all, awesome and great. And then you find out that the villain is related to them. It's their cousin or brother or whatever. And the only reason why this person chose to murder babies is because they're jealous of their relative's success. And that just doesn't happen. There's never been a guy who becomes a serial killer because his brother became a doctor.
Okay, I gotta ask. Do you watch Once Upon a Time?
I watched the first season. It's on my list. Unfortunately, I'm writing 7 days a week right now, about 12, 14 hours a day. So my TV watching time has shrank. I still get the really important shows like, Archer.
Exactly.
But outside of that,
I've been forcing myself to try to stay up on it, and I just thought it was really funny that you mentioned it, because that is the current plot line of the new season. To a T.
It's well overdone. I mean, Aragon and Magique, and the list goes on and on and on and on of fantasy that have that as their premise.
Yep.
So when I came up with the idea for the Genesis of Oblivion Saga, and it's changed, it's much different than this now, because characters take on a life of their own. Once you start writing them, they become living, breathing entities, and they're going to do their own thing, and they're going to decide their own fate to an extent. But the original idea was, I wanted to see what would happen if you took two brothers And somehow they were on opposite sides of something, sort of like the Civil War syndrome. But the only problem with the Civil War analogy is most of the brothers that split from that, like one would go to the south, one would go to the north, they actually hated the other brother because of the viewpoints of the other brother. So that didn't work. But what I was looking for was what happens if you take two brothers who love each other, who actually care for each other, and for whatever reason, fate has put them on opposite sides of something, but they're both heroes. So they're both on a journey to do good. However, if one succeeds, it means the failure of the other. And I took that dynamic. And again, it's changed a lot since then because the brothers have kind of done their own thing as they've been traveling through this thing. But that's really the catalyst for that story and the story arc. Now, I like epic fantasy, so there's a lot of plot arcs, there's a lot of sub-plot arcs, there's a lot of main characters that, come and go. I am a writer who kills off characters, even main ones. So, if you're looking for the happy endings, I don't write a lot of happy endings. I really like tragedy. I don't know why, but it's always been something I've been attracted to. So there's a lot of bad things that happen to my heroes. I always laugh when I meet people for the first time and they haven't read any of my stuff and they'll look at my fantasy series and like, so, which of these characters did you model after you? And I'm like, yeah, none of them. I'm horrible to these people. I would never, I don't want to be any of them. Because I kick the living crap out of them constantly. I don't mind my heroes winning. I just want them to suffer a lot before they actually succeed. So if you're looking for happy endings, probably not your guy. I got a couple projects that have happy endings, but those won't come out for a few years.
You have me intrigued. I think I am definitely going to pick up your book and read it.
Well, even like when Sony approached me, that was the one thing that I was a little concerned about because, they approached me back in 2012 and they were like, hey, we're looking for somebody who can really write because we really want to put out a high-end quality product for our fan base. The game EverQuest Next is not going to come out don't quote me on this because I have no idea. I'm not in that loop, but from my understanding, 2015, 2016, who knows? And right now, pretty much what they're doing is they're using me and a couple other writers as their marketing. So every month, one of our stories is released. I think right now I've got 6 or 7 stories released, and then a guy named Robert Lassen has 3. So those are the stories that are available on the EverQuest Next website. But when they approached me, I was like, I write pretty dark, pretty violent, pretty gory, pretty bloody, pretty graphic. Is that what you're looking for, or am I going to have to tone this down? And they're like, no, we've read your stuff. That's why we approached you. We want it to be a more adult-oriented content. And by adult, I don't write sex or cussing, but I do, I'm kind of famous for my violence. So I will make you cringe at my action sequences. I don't know. As I always say, I love monkeys. I think monkeys are funny, but the dismembered monkeys are just so much more funny. Or funnier. Whichever way you're supposed to go with that. I'm a writer. That's why we have editors.
So basically, the real world sucks motive, so deal with it.
Pretty much. Bad things happen to good people.
Yep. Well bad things happen to everyone.
So, just to show I actually did do some research, I did read the the Stars of Home, which is a short story you did for EverQuest Next. I really liked it. It was a good short story.
Thank you. And that actually is the first one you should read from that. All the shorts and novellas that are out right now. Stars of Home kicks off. It's the first event that starts a domino effect that leads to the Dragon War. That is a pivotal moment.
Yeah, it's quite horrible, actually. I won't give it away, but there's it goes from bad to increasingly horrible. There's loss of digits and and explosions and it's awesome. It's actually really good.
I appreciate it. I do enjoy writing the pain and the tragedy and I don't know. I have a dark cloud in my mind and I like exploring it. I like, wondering what it would be like to be in those events. I actually write with my eyes closed. So when I'm writing my first draft, I don't even know what I'm writing. Like when I reread my first draft for the first time, and this happens every single time I write. I wrote today on a Sony story. When I reread it, there are paragraphs that I have no memory of writing. And I'm like, wow, I have no memory of that. So I'm literally just watching an event taking place in my mind, and I really try to just dive into it and put that onto the page. So I don't know, I just really enjoy the darker side of things. So I was worried, that wasn't actually the first one. We wrote those out of order, which I wish we hadn't, but I'm just a small cog in the wheel when it comes to Sony, so I do what I'm told. But we actually wrote the last of that first because they thought it would be a more dramatic impact. So the two novellas that are the final two pieces to that story arc, which are, mine is The Last Stand at the Tear Doll, and Robert Lassen's is The Fall of Bastion. Both those happen simultaneously in the same, location. They're both from the perspective of elves. I'm writing from a guy named Karamor Thex, who's an elven prince, and Lassen is writing from a guy named Corlin Larkus, which he is the archmage, and they're trying to basically save the last of the elves from the dragon horde that has totally obliterated everything about the elven culture. And I wish I did put a lot of pain and grief into there. But now that I know the story arc so much more, because when they brought us on, they were still trying to figure out what the backstory was. They were still trying to figure out, what we're going to do with the game and everything like that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with EverQuest or EverQuest 2. But EverQuest came out in 99, EverQuest 2 came out, I think, in 2005, 2006, and was a continuation of it. It was supposed to be 500 or 1,000 years later. I didn't play either of those games.
Yeah, neither did I.
It was a continuation of the story. With EverQuest Next, it's a reboot. EverQuest 1 and EverQuest 2 do not exist. They never happened. So what they're doing is they have the freedom to fix, because, back in 99, they didn't know how big EverQuest was going to get. They had no idea what this was going to be. So they were just basically putting out a game at the time. And there's been, I don't know how many, 100 writers that have come and gone, worked on that project, and there are story stubs that got started in the game that never really were finished, and there's just a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of different things that happened over the last 14 years or 15 years or 14 years of them doing EQ Next, or doing EverQuest, I'm sorry. And so they want to fix all that. They want it to be a stronger story. Back in the 90s, video game companies weren't necessarily writing games for the story, they were writing games for the playability. And so that's what they were doing with EverQuest. It was supposed to be a fun game, not an interesting one. I mean, it was obviously supposed to be interesting as well, but that wasn't their focus.
Right.
And with EverQuest Next, they want it to be just the crown jewel, and they are putting everything into this. It's so beautiful working on this project. But they want really well done and fleshed out backstory for this world. So they're able to take all the things that worked well in the first two franchises, and then get rid of stuff that wasn't, change things that were a little inconsistent. When you work on a project for that long, you really do start understanding what that world should be like. And EverQuest Next is going to be that.
Yeah, and with the title, it makes me curious if they plan on doing a tie-in with the with D&D Next, which is coming out this summer.
Not to my knowledge.
Just a convenient happenstance for naming.
Maybe. I actually haven't heard of Dungeons & Dragons Next, so.
Yeah, it's essentially 5th edition, I guess.
Right. I live in a bubble. Like I said, I'm writing 7th right now. I keep up with the current stuff. Like, I know that Bill Clinton is our president. I know we're at war with Russia. But outside of that, I don't keep up with it much.
Well, you're actually pretty close to right on that. Wait a couple months.
And that sucks because old Putin has ruined my joke. Like, I've been saying that joke for like 5 years, and now we are actually maybe going to war with Russia.
Well,
so now it seems like I'm keeping up with current events.
One of the things that when you mentioned the names earlier, that it's something that always gets me, and I'm kind of curious. How the heck do you know how to pronounce the names of half these people?
Well, if I'm writing them, I've got how I pronounce them. So, which names in particular were you talking about? Just so I... Are you talking about like Corlin Larkos and Karamor Thex and...
Yes, the two highly, almost unpronounceable names you just spit out like they're natural.
I mean, I become these characters when I'm writing them, so of course I'm going to know. I know my own name. I should know their names. I actually, like with all of my series, and every once in a while I get a fan review. Like I said, I don't read them anymore, but the ones that do still stab me in the heart are when somebody says something like, I hated his fantasy speak. I spend a lot of time on fantasy speak. I spend a lot of brain power and burn a lot of cells trying to come up with it. And I understand that nobody wants to read a story where the main character has, 15 syllables and 3 apostrophes. But I also don't want to read a fantasy story about Jim the warrior and John the wizard who goes and slays Tim the dragon to rescue Jill the, princess. Yes. I don't want to read that story, and I'm definitely not going to write it. So I do want it to have some type of fantasy flair. So I really am conscious of it. I try to do stuff like anything that's going to be used a lot, city names or character names that are going to be used repetitively through the story. I try to make them sound fantasy, but also be very short. So like my main characters in the Genesis Oblivion series are Klain, Clytus, Alant, Arderi, Alith, Delmith. Names that obviously are not from our world, but they're not, Zedariah Zanzarul or whatever that mage's name was from the Sword of Truth series.
Yeah, Zedekiah. I can't remember his name now.
Yeah, exactly. They called him Zed.
Yeah,
but
Zed.
I also, when I do go crazy, like when I have the Chandril Elian, which has an apostrophe in it, I do like to go into some of the old tongue and kind of create the crazy fantasy speak. But every time I do that, I always have a common tongue name for it. So in other words, like the Chandril Elian is also called the Academy. So characters that are of a common birth, we'll call it the Academy. And those that are of a scholared level, we'll call it the Chandril Elian. But if you, as the reader, don't ever want to pronounce Chandril Elian because it's just too much to say, then just say Academy when you get to that word. Like I tried to give you an out by having those. So everything that I have, Quakagana, which has 2 apostrophes in it, is also called the Sending Stone. And it's used interchangeably throughout the story so that you can, I don't want to read Quakagana. It has 2 apostrophes in it. That's crazy. Great. Say Sending Stone. It's in the book. So it always kind of hurts me a little bit when people are like, I hated his fantasy speak. It's just, why do you have to have apostrophes in fantasy books?
Well, then why are you reading a fantasy book
I
if
know.
you're not expecting that?
so many of the bad reviews that I get from fans, and and I don't get a lot, so I shouldn't say so many, but the ones that I do get will say stuff like, and he had a bunch of people running around casting spells and wielding swords, and I'm like, yeah, it's called epic fantasy. Are you going to review a Sherlock Holmes book and say, I hated this book, it was just about figuring out who killed this guy? It's like, yeah, that's called a mystery. That's that's the genre. If you don't like it. I did have 1 2-star on Goodreads where he dogged me about that, but at the end he said, but I will admit that I am just totally sick of fantasy, and I don't even know why I read this one. Then don't give me a 2-star, because you're tired of the genre.
So have you ever gotten to a point where you're trying to create names for cities or locations or characters, and found out later on that you actually use something that's in a existing world? As in, say, Forgotten Realms or, any other fantasy-style novel that you may have read in the past?
There was actually an instance of that, and I'm trying to think of what it was now. It's something I'm currently working on. I just didn't care. I mean, I kept it. Well, it wasn't anything that I had read. Somebody pointed out, one of my editors or something, I'm trying to remember what it was. I can't even remember now. This happened within the last 6 to 8 months. But I had named something, or it was a character name, and they were like, that's the same name as blah, 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 and this blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I've never read it. I don't care. So I kept it. I mean, in the Digital Oblivion series, one of the main characters is a big lion dude. And I didn't know that EverQuest had big lion dudes in it. So, you know, everyone's like, oh, you got hired because you write really good big lion dudes. I've yet to write a big lion dude story in EverQuest. They were actually in the last stand of the Tyrdal. In that area, there were Karens, which is what the lion dudes are called in EverQuest. And I was like, awesome, I love writing lion dudes. I've got one in my own. And they were like, yeah, you can't write them because we don't even know what we're going to do with them yet or not. Like I said, it was early on when I wrote that story, so I wasn't even allowed to even mention that they were there. Even though they were there.
Nice.
Because they didn't know if they were going to have them, they didn't know if they were going to have them, they didn't know if they were, you know, what they were going to look like at the time. I mean, this was they hired us right when they were putting together everything. So, there's been some things, like when I reread the last stand of the Tyrdal with my EverQuest knowledge now, I'm like, wow, if I had known that, I would have put that in there, and I would have put that in there, and I would have put that. Just all this. I love detail. I love Easter eggs, and I love dropping hints and clues and things. The example that I would use, and this is not too much of a spoiler, but at the beginning of the second book, there's this chick, and she's on her knees in front of this priest, and she is a zealot, and she's all, you know, the priest can do no harm. And the priest is kind of petting her on the head, which is a little creepy. But she starts quoting from the Book of the 12. And what she says obviously makes him mad because he interlaces his fingers into her hair and just squeezes until her scalp is screaming out in pain. And of course she doesn't stop him because she's a little crazy as well. But the priest is kind of an evil dude anyway, so when you read the scene, it doesn't really stand out as odd. It stands out as, you know, you don't maybe not really understand why, but it's just the guy gets mad at really weird times. But by the fourth book, you read a section that is what that is, and then you find out who this priest was and his connection to the past and all this other stuff. And then you realize that, wow, he probably should have just decapitated her for saying that to him. Like, it was that bad what she said, and she got off lightly with just a little bit of a hair pull. But I love doing stuff like that. I love doing stuff that you'll never notice on the first pass. And then when you reread it, you'll be like, oh my goodness. I can't believe she said that to him. He should have killed her for that.
Yeah.
So I like stuff like that.
The kind of details where it's not actually foreshadowing because it doesn't tell you what's going to happen. It's kind of like a back shadow of sorts.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I'm gonna coin that word. I'm gonna steal that from you. Backshadowing.
Yeah, because I'm a big Heinlein fan, and he just peppers his stories with that type of stuff. It's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, and that's where plotting comes in to play so much. I would never have been able to do that because I'm not even finished writing book 3 yet. I'm close. It's only 2 years late. So I am definitely, getting toward the end.
I was just about to ask you when book 3 was coming out.
Yeah. There's no release date right now. Here's the reality. So when you publish a book, you feel great, but the industry treats you like you have leprosy. Because they don't know. They have no idea whether you're going to make it or not, because the realities are writing well and telling a compelling story does not make you a success in this industry. I always say this industry is 10% skill and 90% luck. So once somebody takes a chance on you, once there's a publisher out there willing to drop money on you and, get your book out to the world, everyone else just literally stands back and watches. It's like a train wreck. Are they gonna step out of the way of the oncoming train, or is that train gonna just crush them and splatter their blood all over the place? So after that, as a writer, you kind of starve. You don't get anything. Nobody hires you. Nobody sends you any work. They have no idea whether you're gonna sink or swim. And then when I started treading water, I had offers coming in. Hey, write this for us for here, and write this for us for here, and we'll pay you money for this, and we'll pay you money for that. And I said yes to everything, because I hadn't been paid in a while. So I'm like, yes, I'll do that, and I'll do that, and I'll do that, and I'll do that, and I'll do that too. And yes, I'll do that. And so I've been underwater, from a job standpoint for the last 3 years. And I'm finally seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, but that's really kind of what's pushed everything back. And the bad thing is that a couple of the big projects that I did, like 3 years ago I was hired to write a musical, which took a lot of my time. It paid well, but they never got it funded, so it never got produced. And then that led to being hired on an even bigger musical that paid even more money, but unfortunately at the end of it, all the different parties involved got sue happy, and so it's now in litigation. So even though I got paid, and they raised the money because it was a $20 million project that all the money was raised for, but now it's in litigation, and who knows if it'll ever actually be produced. But that was a big chunk of my time for both those years to do those projects that the public may never see. So even though I got paid for it, it doesn't help the brand.
Right.
And then Sony hired me in 2012, and I was writing for them, for 2012, well, really 2013, because it was December when they hired me. But writing for them, and I couldn't say anything, so I went to some conventions in March and April and May, and they're like, so, your third book's still out now. What are you actually doing? Because you've stopped kind of releasing anything. And I'm like, yeah, shut up. Just buy this other new thing that I have and stop talking. Because I couldn't say anything. I was under an NDA and I wasn't allowed to even say the word Sony. So when they announced me back in August, then everybody was like, oh, you've been writing for Sony. So then, obviously those stories are coming out now. And yeah, even people who don't play, EverQuest, that's kind of my goal with the stories for EverQuest. And I'm glad that you enjoyed the Stars of Home, because that's my opinion about what I'm doing for Sony. My opinion is that I'm writing really good stories that Sony likes so much that they happen to be making a game out of them. I didn't approach this as a tie-in writer that I'm going to write stories, dictated by them, and obviously they are dictating what I do, but I'm saying,
yep.
I came at it from an actual artist's perspective, from a writer's perspective. I want compelling stories, like Last Stand of the Tyradol. And it's not a spoiler because this is the description of it. Basically, it's the Elven Prince taking an elite fighter group to hold off the Dragon Horde long enough to buy his people time to escape. And obviously it's called The Last Stand of the Tyradol, so it doesn't end very well. So, Custer's Last Stand, it's in the name. Yeah. So, when they first gave me the story stub, I wrote them back and I was like, so what's his motivation? And they were like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, he's committing suicide. Why? And they were like, well, because he's saving his race. And I'm like, no, he's a prince. Like, there's gotta be something else. There's gotta be more. And so, through discussion, one of the things that I picked out was like, does he have a wife? And they were like, he may not. We don't really know. And I'm like, well, I really want him to have a wife. Because that gives me, because I had an idea for a motivation point for it. And they were like, all right, have a wife, make it up. And I was like, and she's gonna be dead. She died like 3 months ago. And they were like, okay, whatever. So the story actually opens up with him in the crypt, underneath the bastion, underneath the castle. And he's by himself and he's talking to her corpse. And it's very somber and but it sets up the tone of why he makes the decisions he makes. And he actually, because he's this brilliant military leader, and halfway through the story he does something just totally stupid that gets a lot of his people killed. And he even thinks about it while he's doing it. And he's like, you know what? I'll just burn in hell for everyone I kill, because of this bad decision. I don't care, because I'm going to do this. And so because of that setup and because of where he came from at the beginning of the story, you get it as the reader. You understand why, even though what he's doing is going to cost his men their lives, you get it. You understand his decision-making process at that point. So for me, it's always about the motivation. It's always about the emotion. It's always about the why people do what they do. It's why I love people watching so much. I love, one of the cool things with being in Vegas, when people come into town, they're always like, we gotta go down the Strip. I hate the Strip. But I do love going down there and sitting and watching. Because I watch people, and I'm constantly, everyone becomes a character in my head, and I'm going, what is your backstory? Why are you here, and what brought you here, and why are you wearing that outfit, or drinking that drink, or talking to that person, or walking that way, or whatever. Like I said at the beginning, I think writers just see the world different. We're odd people.
Yeah, I'd say odd's a good word. So tell me a little bit about Imagined Enterprises Incorporated.
They're a small press. I think they've got about 8 or 9 authors now. I was their first. They were trying to build things. They found my stuff online. They actually bought the Genesis Oblivion series before I had finished writing the first book. I was still probably about 20,000 words from finishing it. I've done a lot for them. I was there, when they first brought me on, they didn't have a huge staff. They still don't have a huge staff. But, I actually edited their next 2 projects they're out now, which is the Dragon Soul Saga and the Wrathful Skies, which is by Robert Lassen. Robert Lassen actually started as a student of mine about 3 years ago, and I pitched his project, obviously, to Imagined Enterprises and got him on with them, but I was also the editor on both of those projects. I'm not editing for them anymore. I'm just too busy. But they're a good house. I think you're saying that to lead up to the Kickstarter that they're doing with Larry Elmore.
Yes, I am.
So Larry's been a friend of mine. I met him pretty much right after I became a professional in this industry. And, he's one of my longtime idols. Like, anybody who grew up playing Dungeons & Dragons knows the name of Larry Elmore.
Yep.
I was a big Dragonlance fan, and obviously that's all his art. And I can't tell you how many hours of my childhood were spent staring into a Larry Elmore painting and just imagining myself in it and, living the adventure that he painted. And that's kind of where that was one of the big things that spurned me as a child and really molded me into the fantasy sci-fi genres. And so when we were at a convention together, I wanted to meet him. So I went up and started talking to him, and we just bonded. We just hit it off. From then on out, every time we've been at a convention, we do 2 or 3 conventions a year, and we'll go out to dinner or, whatever. And we got to talking a couple years ago about Snarf Quest. And I have everything Snarf Quest. I mean, everything, the TSR one that they put out that was half the story. There was the self-published thing that Larry did a couple years ago, and I had a copy of that. And I said, actually, I was probably the first person to ever make a graphic novel of Snarf Quest. And he was like, what do you mean? And I actually had brought it to the convention because I wanted to show him. And I pulled out this orange, beat up, spilled on little 3-ring paper binder thingy that I've had literally for 30 years. And I said, my family owned businesses, and at the house we had an office, so there was a copy machine in there. And every month when Dragon Magazine came out, one of the first things that I would do is I would copy Snarf Quest out of Dragon Magazine and put it in this 3-ring binder. And I had that. So I brought it and I showed it to him. I'm like, look, this is a 14, 15, 16-year-old making a graphic novel of Snarf Quest back when it was in Dragon Magazine.
Wow.
And he's like, I cannot believe that you have that. That's crazy. So, I talked to him about the self-published thing that he did. And I said, it's not the complete story. You're missing a couple pages. You got a couple pages out of order. And he's like, yeah, I know. I've never had time to deal with that. I've never wanted to do it on a professional thing. There was some things he didn't like about it. Like, he didn't like his handwritten text. It was never edited, really. It was just something he wrote on the fly and
Yep.
Dragon Magazine published. And so I, just in conversations, I just started talking about what if somebody was to professionally publish this? And obviously, there isn't a publisher alive that wouldn't want that project. I mean, Ace and Tor and everybody else has made offers to him, but he's never been happy with the quality of it. So when I figured that out, I went to Imagine. I was like, hey, Larry might actually sign this away, but it's going to need some work. I mean, it needs to be digitally remastered. He wants all of his handwritten text pulled out of it and added back in digitally. He wants an editing on it, and they were, they're a tiny little house. So getting Larry Elmore in their staple of authors is a huge boon for them. So they jumped on it, and that's really, I kind of brokered the deal between them, and they've been working on it for about a year, digitally remastering and all that, and then, I've been their face because I'm the one that I'm the only author they have that's a full-time writer. So, I don't have any other jobs other than, the writing gigs that I do. And I do a lot of conventions. I'm on the road between 90 and 100 days a year doing, conventions all over the United States. And so I've kind of become their face, and that's what they wanted me to run this Kickstarter for them. So we sat down, we put it all together, and it launched about 2 weeks ago. We've already hit our goal. It's actually done less than I was hoping it would do. I mean, we're at about 15,000 right now, 2 weeks into it. But we have stretch goals. We actually have stretch goals all up to 150,000, but I really thought we'd hit that 50,000 mark fairly quickly. And we're still, we still have plenty of time. There's still 16 days or 15 days or something like that left on it.
And 16 days left.
And that's the thing about Kickstarter is it just takes time to get the name out. I mean, I know there's at least 250 to 300,000 Snarf Quest fans out there. And I guarantee you only 1,500 or 2,000 of them even know this Kickstarter exists.
Yeah.
So
I actually didn't find out about it till Rod flagged me down about this interview. So
yeah. So I mean, there's so many people out there that grew up on Larry. What I would like to do, my dream as a fan is to take it. We're obviously doing it. It's been remastered. They're going to do it as a hardback. Larry's actually doing a new cover for it. I mean, these are all stretch goals that we have to hit, but this is kind of the plan that we want to put it out there. But somebody came up with the idea to ask how much it would cost to colorize the whole thing, and that someone was me, because I really was interested to find out what that would cost and what, could we do that? Because it would just, in my opinion, be an awesome gift to give back to Larry for 35 years of, awesomeness to the fantasy fandom. He has been,
exactly.
I mean, he's been everything. I don't think there's a single person in the fantasy world that hasn't been influenced by him, even if you don't know who he is. Like, I meet people all the time where I talk about Larry Elmore, and they're like, yeah, I don't know the name. And I'll say, did you read Dragonlance? And they're like, of course. I'm like, remember the covers? I'm like, yeah, they were beautiful. Larry Elmore. And they're like, oh. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, pretty much all you have to do is mention Dragonlance, and everybody automatically knows who Larry is.
Right. So it's, Snarf Quest was his only, self-done. He drew it, he wrote it, he did everything on it. And it's a great story. It's a funny story. It's well worth buying just for the story. But if we could hit the stretch goals and turn it into because I was actually, somebody had asked that the other day. One of the backers had asked, I can't tell the difference. Which level do I get where I get the softback, and which level do I get the hardback? And I'm like, well, they're only printing one book. It's expensive to do a big print run, so they're only doing one. And right now, it's a paperback. If we hit 40,000, it's a hardback, and everybody just gets the hardback. So there is, that's kind of the joy of Kickstarter is you price everything out, for what you need to produce the minimum of the product, and then if you raise more money, you can do a better product. That's what Kickstarter is. You're funding, it's the fans getting together. But to colorize the entire 240-page black and white graphic novel is not cheap. So after all the numbers were done, and then that also increases the price of the print job, because now you got 250 pages in color instead of, 18 pages or something like that are in color right now. So it just increases the cost all around. So that's that last goal, that 150,000 goal. Is if we hit that, then Imagine is going to hire colorists to completely colorize the Snarf Quest with Larry kind of overseeing that process. I mean, he's in retirement mode. He's 67 years old and has been doing this for 35 years. And I just, like I said, that was the big dream for me, was as the fandom to get together and kind of raise this money to do this project and kind of give that back to him almost as a retirement gift. I mean, obviously it's not. He's gonna be working for years to come. But
all I have to say is thank you for making at least the Kickstarter happen, because Snarf Quest, I've loved Snarf Quest since the first day I opened up a Dragon magazine, and everything that Larry's done. I even have I don't know if you remember the old Snarf Quest trading card game.
I don't have it, but yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, I've got like eight of them, including all the minis that came with them.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah, I've pretty much acquired everything I can, and I've even, I called to order some prints, and Larry answered the phone.
Yeah.
We spent 30 minutes just talking about Dragonlance and his art and a lot of other stuff. So he's just a great guy, and it threw me for a loop.
He is so approachable.
Yeah. I was amazed. He answered the phone and just talked to me for a while. I mean, it was crazy. So
yeah,
I'm just glad this project is happening, and I am. As we speak, I am putting my money in the project.
Well, thank you. And that's the thing. That's like I said, we were kind of expecting to hit 50,000. That was never in question for anybody. So right now we're scheduled to hit about 28 to 30,000, which gives us some decent stretch goals. I'm still holding out hope that we're going to hit that 40,000 because I'd love to see it in hardback. First of all, this book has never been professionally published. TSR did the first, not quite 2/3 of the story. So it was about, 3/5 of the story or whatever it was. I'm not a mathematician, so if 3/5 is bigger than 2/3, I screwed up. But they did less than 2/3 of the story. And that was the only professional publishing of it. Larry did it as a self-published piece, which he's had at conventions that you can get or whatever. But it's never been done in a complete package, like I said, because he had missed a couple pages and there were a couple pages out of order. And it didn't have some of the stories in it. Not all the stories that were in later issues of Dragon Magazine, because there were a couple color stories that he did for them. None of those were in there. So this will be the first time that the entire story is in one thing.
Because they were also, it wasn't just Dragon Magazine they were in, right? Wasn't it, what other magazine did he have it published in after it left TCR? Or TSR?
Isn't it Knights of the Dinner?
That's what it was.
Yeah, but that's not this story. That's, The Adventure Continues. So that's a different 64-page full-color story that he's still writing. He's only about halfway through drawing that. And that's a part of our Kickstarter as well. So you can get that as well. And if we get enough of them, Imagine is actually going to do one book with both stories in it. But we would have to get, we'd have to get enough. I think they need like 150 of book 2s to be sold. I have no idea where they're at right now. But I think if they get like 150 or maybe 200 of book 2 sold, they're actually everyone who gets book 2 and book 1 will actually get them as one book. Instead of 2.
Yeah, I do know there was some confusion. I had posted on Facebook on a couple of different groups. Some people were asking, well, didn't he just do a Kickstarter for Snarf Quest?
Yeah, and that was part 2 to that. So, and I don't know exactly how it transpired, but basically he did his big book, his big leather-bound, My Life's Work collection, which I have sitting over on my shelf. Right. Because I was one of the backers for that. And I guess he misinterpreted how much it was going to cost for shipping on that puppy, because it's a huge, big, leather-bound, thick, heavy book. And so, Imagine had bought Snarf Quest, the original story, and he was working on Snarf Quest 2, and they had talked to him about it, but he was like, no, Knights of the Dinner Table are doing that in their magazine. I'm not really looking at getting that published right now. And they were like, they're busy, so they just backed off on it. So it was actually a shock, because I didn't get the message. Like, somebody called me up in a panic 2 days after that Kickstarter had launched, and they were like, what's going on? So that's when I looked at it, I'm like, crap, I don't know. And so I called up Larry, and he's like, yeah, just, we're gonna do, it's just book 2, and I just need a little extra money for shipping of book 1, and so it just didn't happen. Like, he actually regrets it now. He actually has said to me that he wished that he would have just let Imagine do all of it. He just wasn't thinking when he was doing it. His mind was more on, I need another, $10,000 or $15,000 to cover shipping. Right. And I have this new story of Snarf Quest. Let me just kickstart that. So I think it was just that. It was just a simple little thing of, and Imagine had been working on it for about 8 or 9 months. In the beginning they sent him, they were like, this is what we're doing. Here's some samples of all the digitally mastering. He signed off on all that, and then they just went to work. And so it took him about 8 months to go page by page by page and digitally remaster everything, ripping out the text. Once they put in the new text, and they'd send it to me, and I could, do my editing on it. So, it was just a big process. And, again, it's a staff of 3 people over at Imagine. So it's not like they have a huge amount of labor force that they can, just knock something out in 2 months or whatever. Right. So I think Larry had kind of, that was a project that he had signed off, and it was done in his mind. So, it's a shame, but I'm hoping, because I've seen that there was a little bit of negative feedback to it. They actually got under Larry's skin a little bit, because his last update on Kickstarter was kind of funny, because he was like, look, you'll get what you pay for it. I'm not screwing anybody over. And if you want the new stuff, we'll give you the new stuff. And you don't want, but he's like, I just want to draw and paint. That's all I want to do is draw and paint. I don't want all this, everybody being mad at me and talk to Imagine, and I just want to draw and paint. I think he said that 4 times in that post. So there was, but the reality is, in his last update, because we talked about it, and in his last update, he put out a thing that said to the people that bought on his old one, because he did some book ones on that one too, because he had a whole bunch of them in stock. He's like, look, we'll give you your choice. If you want the old stuff that's, a little wonky and doesn't have all the pages and has my handwritten text, but that's what you want, you'll get it, because that's what you bought. But for those, because there was also people who were like, well, now I want the new stuff. I want the digitally remastered one. And so he's like, and if you guys want that, depending on where this lands and what Imagine does as far as how many they produce and all that, you'll get that instead. He's like, so, I'll make you both happy. And that's kind of Larry's MO. He really wants to just make fans happy. So those that want the original stuff, because that's what they, had originally paid for, they're going to get that. And those that want the new stuff, they're going to get that.
I haven't had too much experience with dealing with Larry, but the little I have, I can guarantee everybody who's listening, he's not going to let anybody down.
No, he is definitely one of the higher quality people on this planet. I've met a lot of people in my life, and I'm very blessed to have made his acquaintance and befriended him. He's brought a lot to my life, just a lot of quality. And this is, I'm talking about him as a person, not what he did for me for the 30 years that I was drooling over his artwork.
Should we go over a little bit of what extra items you can get on the Kickstarter?
Certainly. First I'd like to say, because this is going to be on the internet, the Kickstarter's running through, I think, May 5th.
Yep.
Yes.
So if you're hearing this before May 5th, go to Kickstarter and check this out. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff. They're doing, Imagine is doing a collector's coin, which I'm a collector. Like, my office is just deep paradise. I have got,
I don't know what you're referring
just
to.
Everything. I'm just a fan, and I love everything in this industry. So things like collector's coins make me giddy. Cause it's just not something that you see a lot of, in a lot of places. So they're doing a collector's coin, which is this big, heavy, it's actually from the military. It's what the military calls challenge coins. And the military will buy these things and give them out as rewards. So it's not a cheap plastic. I mean, this is it's this really heavy, think of like an award medal. So it's like that. It's a very thick piece of metal that has the artwork on it. And it's in full color, which is really cool. It's got Snarf kind of popping out at you with his sword. They're also doing a set of playing cards, 52 card playing card deck, with 2 jokers. I don't know. I don't think I've ever told anybody what the jokers are. We actually, if you remember, Larry drew himself into some of the Snarf quests.
Yeah.
So we actually pulled those out, and the jokers are Larry.
That is awesome.
I don't even think Larry knows that. So there's those cards. We've made some t-shirts. Imagine also has a printing arm for some high-end fantasy stuff. I guess I should give a plug to that. It's not officially launched yet. It's called buyfantasyart.com. Right now there's a test site up, but for the last 4 months they've been having a custom e-commerce package being programmed. I think it's launching in like 6 weeks or something like that. But like Larry's moving his art to that. The Buy Fantasy Art will be the official Keith Parkinson art reseller. So there's nowhere else to get Keith Parkinson art but Buy Fantasy Art.
That's awesome.
I think Todd Lockwood's a part of it. There's a bunch of big names. It's going to be an exclusive high-end fantasy illustration website. It's the only one where it's going to be just a really niche market. You can buy stuff from it now, but it's like Jason Engel and Lars Grant West and Drew Baker and some guys like that. They're doing some prints obviously for this that have never been produced before for Snarf Quest. What else? I'm not actually looking at the Kickstarter. I probably should. If you remember Raul Partha, Iron Wind Metals still had the Snarf Quest molds. So they're going to do a limited run of minis for this, for how many ever people pick up the miniature sets. So it's the same price as it was back in 1986 or whenever those were released.
Yeah, and that is on my backer list. I'm a huge miniature collector, so
yeah,
having that full set is going to be very awesome.
Yes.
I love it. Yeah, huge miniature collector.
I'm that way with t-shirts. So I'm like, for me, the t-shirts and the coin are the two things that I'm uber excited about. The t-shirts are dye sublimated, so it's a really high end, it's not the press on or whatever. It's the ones that, they get printed. And I don't know exactly how dye sublimation works, but it's something about, the printer superheats the ink into steam and uses the steam to paint the image onto the fabric. So you can wash it like 100 times and it still looks brand new. And there's never been a Snarf Quest t-shirt made. So this will be the first Snarf Quest t-shirt made.
God, I don't have enough money.
I'm just thinking the wife's going to kill me. I just got done spending a bunch of money this week, so now I'm going to have to throw this at her too. No, it'll be perfect.
So yeah, so there's some really cool stuff on there. I mean, they really did try to go for the collector. And, obviously that's to entice people to get into this. And most of these things are only going to be done for the Kickstarter. I mean, like with the coin, I know there's a minimum that has to be ordered. So there may be some extra coins after the Kickstarter that will end up being sold. But I know the t-shirts are going to be printed to order, to spec. So, like, I wanted to get one ahead of time, and they were like, nope, can't get one ahead of time. Put your order in with the rest of them, and we're going to order them when we have the number, and then that's what everybody gets.
Yeah, get in line,
so,
mister. Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. Who are you? You're no one special. So the t-shirts are definitely only for this Kickstarter. There is no way to get that t-shirt outside of that. There may be some extra coins. I think the playing cards also has a minimum they have to order, so there may be some of those. But for the most part, if you want to get one of these items, you really need to get it through the Kickstarter. It's the only way to guarantee that there's going to be any of these at all. And then the collector's edition of this, because if you notice, there's also a limited, and it just says limited numbered and signed Snarf Quest 1 book. The reason why they didn't put a number on that is they have 1,000 of them on here. So there's up to 1,000 could be purchased, but they're only going to order how many ever they need to fill the orders, and the numbers will reflect that. So if they only sell 500 of them, then, it'll be whatever out of 500 will be what's printed on the book. If they order 750, it'll be whatever out of 750. If they order all 1,000, it'll obviously be whatever out of 1,000. But, that's why there's not a number on there, because it kind of depends on how many this Kickstarter sells, and then that's going to be it. So to get the signed numbered one, you're going to have to get it through this Kickstarter, because other than that, they're just going to print up a run of the regular books.
Gotcha.
And basically how that works is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with printing. I used to work in a print shop. They'll print up the signature page, which is usually the copyright page, and they'll actually mail that to Larry and to me, and we'll sign it, and then those will go back, and they'll actually print up the, because they're going to do an order of non-signature and then an order of the signature. So they'll print them both up at the same time. They'll just put the signature sheets in to the ones that are supposed to get that.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I've gotten one or two of those before. I think Stan Sakai has been known to do a few of those for his Usagi Yojimbo collections.
Uh-huh.
So I've gotten one or two of those from him.
Yeah, I mean, you can't tell because it's the same thing as signing in a book. It's just cheaper to mail. Like if there's 500 of them, it's obviously cheaper to mail 500 sheets of paper than it is to mail 500 complete books.
Right.
And they're also easier for us to sign. Signing 500 books is labor intensive because you got to, open them up, find the page, turn it. When you have a stack of 500 pages, you just sign, move, sign, move, sign, move. So it's a lot easier to do it that way. But yes, so some really, really awesome stuff on this Kickstarter. I'm very excited about it. As a longtime Snarf Quest fan, this is like a dream come true for me. And the fact that, I also got to edit it. I wrote the foreword to it. I do get a small, little, itty-bitty, teeny-weeny credit on the front cover. It'll say, with foreword by Maxwell Alexander Drake. You may need a magnifying glass to see it, but my name does kind of go on the front cover in some area. I haven't seen the front cover yet because we don't know which cover. Hopefully we hit the stretch goal that allows Larry to draw a new cover for this.
The real question is, though, is does anybody die in the foreword?
There's something in here that says, the $1,000 backer, which was gone. The $1,000 backer got taken like the second day that this went up, and then yesterday, I don't know what happened, but he, had to cancel. So the $1,000 backer level is available. It's a one-off. Only one person can get it. It's everything, including an original piece of art from Larry, and then dinner at Gen Con with me and Larry. So Thursday, August 14th, I think it is. We're going to take the person out to dinner and hand deliver all their goodies to them and eat dinner with them at a restaurant of our choice. So
Red Lobster, here you go.
There you go. I love Red Lobster.
That's the beauty of that joke, is that nobody knows how to exactly take that.
I love Red Lobster. No, I was going somewhere with that. I can't. I've lost my way. Oh no, it was the dying inside. One of the things they get is on our acknowledgement page. There's going to be an Uber backer that says you are the #1 Snarf Quest fan, and that's what this person gets. They get their name in that box. And so I had it written in there that I said that when you get that, I will die inside just a little bit. So, nice. If the $1,000 is not taken, then I'm going to put my name in the Uber Snarf Quest. No, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with that if it doesn't get taken. Because I'm sure they'll make me pay the $1,000. Like, what's your name there? You got to back it.
Does that mean you'll have to take yourself out to dinner?
I guess. And if we're going to Red Lobster, I don't mind eating two dinners.
Well, there you go. That sounds like a win-win.
Yes. Matter of fact, it is available. Maybe I should back it. Right now.
Nice.
And there's actually higher backer levels. It goes up to about $3,000. They acquired some sets that were professionally framed. So they actually have pages 58 and 59. They have pages 51, 52, and 53. They have pages 40, 41, 42, 43, and 44, although there's a typo that I just noticed. 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, and 77. So those were bought by a collector back in the day. So these are the original hand-drawn pieces of art, and they're sequential. So they're whole stories that are already framed. I've seen them. They're gorgeous.
Yeah, I believe I think there's pictures of them somewhere.
Yeah, there's pictures on the website.
There they are. All right. I know I saw them the other day, so another thing I can drool over and know that will not hang on my wall anytime soon.
Yeah, it bees that way.
Yeah.
That's the only bad thing about being in the industry is you usually end up giving the good stuff away to the fans, and you get, as the producers, you get whatever's left over. Which is fine. I love fans. They are the salt of the earth.
I do have one request that I need you to sign on the dotted line that once you finish book 3, you'll come back on the show. And we'll help you promote it.
Absolutely. Or I can do it before then. Because, again, there's no exact release date. Now, I really want to get it done. I don't know if I'm going to get it to the publisher in time to have it produced by Comic-Con, but I'd love to be able to go to Comic-Con with the digital copy and say it's finished. Because I do have a lot of people waiting on that, and that's my last big convention that I just did last month was the Tucson Festival of Books, and I've got a good sized fan base in Tucson. And at my booth, I had to have 2 lines. I had to have a line of people that had not heard of me that were coming up to check out my stuff and purchase something or whatever. And then I had to have a completely separate queue for people who are mad at me and wanted to yell at me about the 3rd book. And they were both about 10 to 12 people deep. So, for the entire 2 days, there was constantly a queue in each line. And my assistant was out there like, are you here to buy or are you here to bitch? Because that's the buy line and there's the bitch line. So, yeah. No, I mean, most of my fans get it. I mean, you have the occasional one that's like, you have betrayed me. And in all honesty, it is a contract. There's a contract between the writer and the reader. And, the Genesis of Oblivion saga is actually 6 novels. Each one ends in a cliffhanger. The 3rd and 4th are what I call my Empire Strikes Back. So they're where things get really dark and really bad, and they end in horrible cliffhangers. So I get it. I get how frustrating it is as a fan to get into a series that you enjoy and then go 2 years and not get the next installment of it. But luckily, most of my fans get that I also have to make a living. I got 2 kids that I have to feed. I've got bills and house and car, and this is my only job. So when opportunities arrive, like, Sony walking up to me, because I did not approach Sony. I didn't know anything about them. They approached me. And when something like that happens, you gotta kind of take it, and most of my I would say 99% of my fan base, even though they're like, we really want that 3rd book, they're also like, but we also want you to be able to not live on the street, because if you start living on the streets, I'm sure you won't write at all.
And I think that's one thing that, as a creative individual myself, and the fan of many, many far greater creative individuals, you kind of have to expect that creativity and true artwork takes time, and it doesn't work on a fixed schedule. Things come when they come, and usually the things that you wait for are the things you appreciate the most. So,
unfortunately, like, I know the story. When I sit down to write, I just crank it. Like with this, these last 2 weeks, I don't think I've written, on book 3, I don't think I've written 2,000 words in the last probably 3 weeks because of the Kickstarter, and I've been to 2 conventions over the last 3 weeks. I'm teaching next weekend at a writers conference. It's busy. It's just, I've got so much going on. I've got, the Downfall comic series that I'm trying to, it's behind. Those are the 2 projects of mine are behind, although Downfall is not my fault. Downfall is drawn by Magic the Gathering artist Jason Engel, and he's brilliant. He's one of the top, illustrators in the industry right now, and he's busy. So Downfall is a side project for us. We did kickstart that, so we have 200 backers that are waiting, but that is one of the things that we told them in the beginning was, this is a side project for me and Jason. This is not, we don't have deadlines with it. And then I got hired right after the Kickstarters when Sony hired me, and Jason started doing a bunch of extra stuff, not only for Magic the Gathering, but for like Game of Thrones. He just won a couple of awards for some of the work that he did for them. And so his career has also been exploding since we kickstarted that. So most of the fans, for that understand that they got in on the ground floor. We're still developing the IP. We're still developing the story. And, on my side, it's finished. The comic scripts are pretty easy for me to write. I can usually write a comic script in about 2 to 3 days. Unfortunately, it can't be drawn that quick. So, Jason's still trying to plow through the art. But to make it up to the fans, I've been trying to fit in, turning each comic book issue into a novella, about a 10,000, 12,000 word novella. So I've done a prequel story for it and given it to the backers, and then I've also done episode 1 is finished and I've given that to the backers. I'm working on episode 2 right now, but again, now that's another 10,000 words that I have to write on top of what I'm already writing. So I'm hoping that I'll actually have an entire Downfall novel out by the end of this year, just because I feel obligated to get it done for the backers. But obviously it's a new product for me, so I can start releasing that to the, out to the world. I am, at the end of this month, I'll be releasing episode 1 of Downfall, on Kindle and Nook and, iTunes and all of that. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's a wonderful story. If you like post-apocalyptic stuff, it takes place about 50 years after the fall of humanity.
Yeah, it does look pretty sweet. I apologize for not bringing that up earlier. I had read the pages that you had on your site.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty cool.
It is a really cool, tight story. I'm excited about it. But again, that is something that's just going to be a side project. I don't want, obviously money's money, so if somebody comes and offers me enough for it, I would do something with it. But right now I just want to not have more deadlines, so I just want to write on it as I have time to write on it. I already feel obligated enough to the 200 people that backed it, so I'm trying to get that out for them, so that at least they have the story that they can say, yeah, look, we got something. It wasn't exactly what we had originally paid for, but the comic is coming, and they all know that. We post up updates and we show them, like, here's a new piece of art, here's a new page, so they see that things are coming. It's just the artwork is just way slow, because of Jason's schedule. And then I have an undead western that I'm working on with a different Magic the Gathering artist, Cyril Vanderhagen. But we're not even, I learned my lesson with Downfall Kickstarter. I will never kickstart a project that isn't done. So that's what I told Cyril when we sat down. I'm like, let's get this finished and then we'll kickstart it.
Yep.
Not going to do that before then because I don't want more fans waiting on a product that I'm working on. So, but that's called Dead Ned. You can actually read a little 3-page promo joke on my website, about it. But I'm very excited about that story as well. Cause it's kind of a Cthulhu-esque, it's really a Cthulhu Western is what it is. But a lot of people don't know what Cthulhu is. But Cyril Vanderhagen is probably one of the best known Cthulhu artists in the industry. So if you've ever played Cthulhu,
you're talking to some major Cthulhu fans. I started reading Cthulhu, now I'm just totally spacing it.
Lovecraft.
H.P. Lovecraft. I started reading him when I was like 8 years old.
Well, if you've seen the Cthulhu box set with that creature underwater coming out over the pentagram city.
Yep.
So that's Cyril Vanderhagen's art.
Oh, okay.
So he's the one who is the artist on Dead Ned, which is a Cthulhu Western.
Nice.
So I'm pretty excited about it. And working with Cyril, me and Cyril have been friends for a long time. So, getting to do a project with him is just cool just because we get along so well. And the same thing with Jason. Me and Jason have been friends. We've been doing a booth at Comic-Con together for quite a few years. He's actually not doing a Comic-Con this year. So, this will be the first year we haven't done a booth together in a while. But it's nice working with people that you're also friends with, that are also, big professionals.
Well, I think I will end part 1 right here, and want to apologize for the sound quality on this episode. We used Skype, and we had a lot of line noise pretty much through the entire recording. And of course, but the second half, the audio started clearing up, so it's part 2 won't be quite as noisy, I should say. We ended up talking with Drake for roughly 3.5 hours Friday night, and I tell you what, it was one heck of a conversation. He's a great guy. He's got so much talent, it's just crazy. I would highly recommend you guys go check him out. You can check out his books at www.genesisofoblivion.com, and his graphic novel, you can find some promo pages of that at downfallthecomic.com. And his website is maxwellalexanderdrake.com. So definitely, guys, if you have not read any of his stuff, which I will admit I'm guilty of, I didn't even know he was around. But I actually just started reading his first book this morning, so I'm looking forward to finding out what happens in this story. Also, seeing as how today is April 20th, you still have plenty of time to get in on the 30th Anniversary Snarf Quest Kickstarter. And please, by all means, if you can help out to make this project even bigger than it already is, I know all of us, including Drake and Larry, would greatly appreciate it. So definitely go check those out. And once again, just to wrap up, be sure to like us on Facebook. Check us out on the blog at thegeeksmenagerie.net and the D20 Radio Network. You can also follow us on Twitter at Geeks Menagerie, and we also have a community over on Google+, which I don't really promote as often as I probably should, but we appreciate all the feedback and all of our new listeners that have joined us in the last month or two. I hope you're enjoying the show, and definitely leave us some feedback. Let us know what you think. It looks like I will have part 2 ready to go either Monday or Tuesday evening. So look forward to hearing the second part of our interview with Drake. And that should do it for now. So thanks for listening.